I am going to now turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Scott Gaynor. Let
Thanks,
me
Sandra. Good
let
morning,
me
everyone.
stop presenting so you can present, Scott.
No, that's all right.
Oh,
You keep presenting. I'll just speak. You.
oh, Lord. Okay.
It's all you. You're good. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. As Sandra said, and this is for those of you who've been around for a while. You'll remember that we used to do these kinds of trainings on the regular, and then we switched to eFinancePlus, and we had COVID and all that good stuff. And so this is our effort to get back to doing that. Really trying to make sure that you all have the tools you need and the resources that you need to make the school year go smoothly, and you're able to pay the people you need paid and buy the things you need to buy. So hopefully you'll find this helpful. Certainly want to thank the finance department staff as a whole who have been here and getting it done all the way through. You see everyone listed there along with their contact information so that you can reach out to anyone if you have any questions or any concerns along the way or at any time. But certainly been an unusual several years. I want to thank Eric and Sandra in particular for putting this presentation together. And I think this is kind of keeping with our theme this year of being innovative and having communication and information. And so hopefully this will help you out in doing what you need to do. And Sandra, you are I was just gonna say, Sandra, you're not on mute. So at any rate, everyone's here. This is the contact information you need, and we have I think we have a lot of good information here for you and a lot of resources, a lot of things you can refer back to later as you're doing what you need to do. So with that, I think we're moving back over to Sandra for the next slide. Maybe.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I just moved it to you on the next one.
I'm sorry. Charlie is here trying to help me to be able to still see my notes. I'm sorry. So I was a little distracted.
That's all right.
I can't see my notes. But here are some of the topics that we're going to be covering. If everyone can see those, I still need you to help me. And if there are any topics that you see finance related that aren't here, please let us know. We are going to send a feedback form at the end of the presentation, and you can share anything that you'd like to see that we maybe haven't covered or touched on here, and we'd be happy to share that information with you. So there will be a feedback form at the end. Also, the recording will be sent to everyone probably at the beginning of next week because it takes time for them to prepare the video. And then all the documents that we reference throughout this training are linked into this presentation, and we will share those with you as well when we share the actual presentation slides. So don't worry if we move through it a little bit fast. We are going to get you what you need, and hopefully this will be a great resource tool for you. All right, so moving on back to Scott.
All right, thank you. So this is just a very high level kind of a slide to talk about the account, because really, it's so important, and we spend a lot of time, and I know you spend a lot of time. If things aren't coded properly, people aren't paid in a timely way, you can't buy the stuff you need to buy as quickly as you need to buy it. So if you have kind of even just a quick and fundamental knowledge of the account structure and what that means, you can look at something that you're trying to put in, a requisition or an extra assignment form you're trying to approve or code, and you can quickly see whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. Because if it's the wrong thing, it's going to end up coming back to you, and then it's a whole delayed process, and we don't want to have that. So real quickly and at a high level here in this slide, what we're trying to say is that there is an accounting structure that every district in the state uses. It's the Uniform School Accounting System. So you have your string of numbers. It's broken down into dimensions or pieces, and each one of those dimensions means something. And so some of it may mean more to some than others, but certainly you're going to have, for example, one dimension is the fund, which you see laid out there, or you see referenced here. And so that's going to tell you, what bucket of money you're pulling from, whether it's the principals fund, if you have an 018, whether it's a grant fund, or more often than not, you're going to be working with the general fund, Fund 1. So that's just one of the dimensions that you're going to be looking at and noting and saying, okay, I'm working within the right fund that I need to be coding something to. Then you'll have, likely a function, which will say whether something might be instructional or it might be special ed or whatever that might be. You'll have an object to say whether it's a material supply or professional services or something like that, an operational unit to tell you what building you're working in. So there are lots of different dimensions. Some we use to a greater degree more than others. There is an entire USAS manual out there and available. We use it, we reference it. It's a lot of detail that you probably don't care about or don't want to see. So what we have done is put together a CHUH commonly used codes document. So it's, and Sandra's pulling it up there for you now. Something that you might want to, print off or just have at the ready, where if you're someone who in particular enters a lot of requisitions or you're looking for coding, this will show you some of those dimensions that we're talking about and kind of give you a quick cheat sheet to make sure you're working within the numbers that you need to be working within. And I think that's really it on that. So again, this hopefully is a good resource for you. So please use it. As always, we're always available to answer questions. And a lot of times those questions are better answered on the front end than if you try to code something incorrectly and put it, into the system. And then that's going to cause issues because then we're going to catch it later. We're going to send it back. It's going to cause a delay for you. So if you do have any questions, you can always give someone a call, even if you're looking at that tool, and we can help you out and make sure that you're coding things where you need to code them. It's important not only because the auditors are following up behind us, making sure that things are coded properly, but also, there's the report card that gets issued. There's not only an academic component to that, but there's a financial component to that as well. And so all of these costs need to be reported in the right spots, because that drives all that report card data and all that reporting. And so, each building gets some financial data that is often used by the community and others for comparative purposes. So you really want to make sure that everything is coded where it needs to be. And I think that is it for me on that one. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric and let him get into all the nuts and bolts of things.
Okay, Eric, you're up.
All right. Well, we are going to get my screen shared here momentarily. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I am excited to be here. We've got a lot to continue to keep presenting to you here today. The next topic here we have our budgets, and I'm going to be looking off to my other screen here, especially as we really start to jump into eFinancePlus. Just some general comments as we start discussing budgets. Of course, this is a lot of what we spend our time with, especially here in the finance department. And so we answer a lot of questions on a number of topics. And of course, we want to be able to get the information to each one of you in a timely manner, but also to allow you the ability to be able to do a number of these things yourself. That's the quickest way, of course, to get a lot of the things done that you need to. And so that's primarily the purpose of a lot of this training, is to do just that. With regards to the budget, again, it's a big animal for the finance office, and it takes a lot of our time. And a lot of you know this because you're participating in the budget process that we typically are starting around the March time frame in its beginning stages. And then it kind of, we work together throughout the ensuing months to really get it finalized and in place for the beginning of the fiscal year. And so one of the things that I want to take some time to show you with here is, first and foremost, is really, now that after you have essentially created that budget and submitted it It's been reviewed and now put in place. Well, how do you access that in eFinancePlus? We get this question often, and I want to make sure that you understand how to access that. And so this is just your, of course, for many, this is just your main dashboard when you're first logging into eFinance. Of course, if you ever want to just simply search for something within eFinance, you're not necessarily sure of what it's called, or maybe you only know a word of it, you can simply type it in this top right-hand corner here, and it'll start to give you different options that you may select. To access the budget ledger, underneath fund accounting module, and one thing I will say first too is you may not see all of the respective options that I have listed here. Over at the finance office, we tend to have a little bit more access, and so some of the times you'll see that we have a lot more options than what you may have in your respective building or location. So if you're seeing something that on my screen that you may not on yours, that just may likely be due to simple accessibility. Underneath fund accounting, again, and entry and processing, under the budget ledgers, you'll see an option called expenditure ledger. When you click on that, it will pop open another window. And this is really where you would specify all of the different selection criteria, such as fiscal year, budget unit, account, so on and so forth. You have all the dimensions that Scott was just mentioning earlier about fund, special cost center, function, and so on and so forth. All of these can help you define what information exactly that you're looking for. Now, for the general fund, underneath the job, you have a number of different defined job numbers here. So just as a few examples, you've got 011 is the building, 020 is the superintendent's office, 021 student services, and so on and so forth. A lot of you would recognize this, like, for example, at the buildings, your budget unit code starts off with 111. And so in this case, it's taking the latter two digits of the job code in this sense. So 1 meaning the general fund, and then the 11 for the building code. And so if we selected the 11 for the 011 for the building code, and we did, let's say, an OP unit, operational unit, we just selected one here at Boulevard's going to be the lucky winner, and we hit search. This is going to bring up, it says 24 matches found, and this essentially is Boulevard's budget and all the budget units and accounts that they have available. So of course you're going to see the current budget figure in the budget column, and by the way, any of these respective columns can be sorted just by simply clicking on the top header here. The period expense, period is just the fancy EFP word for the month. So the month expenditures, year-to-date expenditures, encumbrances, and encumbrances just simply means purchase orders in place. And then the respective balance that's left. So you would have, in this example, a budget of $3,020.42, subtracting any year-to-date expenses, which there aren't in that case, and then also subtracting the encumbrances of $1,281 gives you the balance of $1,739.42 on this particular general supplies line item. So that is how you are essentially accessing your respective budget. There's, again, you can type in a specific budget unit. So if you wanted to, for athletics, simply looking up 39010 is the fund and special cost center, and you said, hey, I'm not sure which account specifically, it may be a 510. I know I have several 510s in the athletics, and so here are all the respective 510 codes, for the different sports in this case. So I know that's a mouthful pretty quickly, but again, getting to your respective budget is under fund accounting, entry and processing, underneath the budget ledgers, expenditure ledger. You will want to remember this path because this is where you would look up your current budget information frequently. The next one here is searching for prior fiscal year data. And so you can do this again in the same section. So as this loads up, if we were going back to the building and looking up Boulevard, and we hit search. So currently, if you noticed, it had 2023 listed there. So actually, we'll go back real quick, hit 2022, and hit search. When you do that, it's going to bring up the information from last year. However, one thing I want you to know is that right now, it's only bringing it through period 2 as it's shown right here up in the top left-hand corner. I know that may be a little bit small to see, but it brings it brings up the information from where you're at in the current fiscal year. So right now we are in period 2, which is the second month of the fiscal year, or August in this case. So if I were to do this search next month, it's going to be as of period 3. Well, you might say, well, that's not as helpful. I want the full year of information. And so up in the top left-hand corner, you'll hit this display through link. It will pop open a new menu here. It says enter period for displays and queries. In this case, we want to hit to display through period 12. So that's just simply going to mean it's 12 months through the fiscal year. So in other words, it would give us all of the 12 months of history through fiscal year 22. We'll hit the blue check to accept and enter. And now it would give us all of the expenditure data for your budget query search through the entire fiscal year of a previous fiscal year. So that's, again, how you would search that information from a previous fiscal year. Again, if you wanted to do 2021, just as an example, and we hit the blue check here. Tony, I see your question here. Do you have access to this? You should. If not, we certainly can double check that for you. You know, everyone should have access to be able to get to the expenditure ledger to see these respective budgets. So if you don't, we can certainly take a look at that for you and make sure that you do.
Eric, Tina also had a question in the chat.
Okay, I missed that one. What was it?
She wanted to know if those ledgers can be exported. I think that's what her question was.
Yes, yes, they can. And so up here in the top left-hand corner, you've got your plus sign, the trash can, and then the print icon. So if you were to click on the print icon, printing to screen is just simply going to create a PDF for you. And we can do that here. Take a moment to populate here, but there's the respective budget that we were just looking, just only in PDF form. And so it can be a little bit difficult to read. I know it is also able to, if we get back to this other window here, you can print that to Excel. And I don't think necessarily you have the capability to view it in Excel, and I'm not sure if it's able to be brought into Google Sheets. I know here over in the finance department, we are religiously using Excel for different things. So printing that to Excel will just simply open that up in an Excel file for us. Again, for other departments and buildings, I'm not sure if you necessarily have that that option, or if it's able to be brought into Google Sheets initially. But sometimes it is a little cleaner to be able to, review the information. To make this a little bit bigger here. You're seeing your budget, period expenses, year-to-date expenses, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's how you look up the prior fiscal year data. The next topic, budget control and requisitions. So oftentimes this becomes a little bit more relevant here at the beginning of the fiscal year. So of course, just prior to the fiscal year starting, we're entering a ton of requisitions into the next year's requisition section. And the system does not recognize the budgets that you have entered at that time because they're not fully posted. What I mean by that is if you submitted through the budget process that you said, hey, this particular budget unit and account or line item is only going to have a budget of $2,000, but you go to submit a requisition or multiple that add up to 5,000, the system is not going to stop you when the budgets are in that temporary phase, if you will, because they're not fully posted. It's only until we get into the new fiscal year when the previous fiscal year is fully closed that those budgets are going to become finalized. And so when Sandra then looks to do the first purchase order run, at that time the system is doing the check. And so if you've entered 5,000 in that example that I gave on a line item that only has a $2,000 budget unit, those POs are not going to print. And so that's going to create some problems. We're going to have to circle back and do some budget transfers in order to essentially get more funds into that line item. But in essence, going back to the budget control, and this is within the expenditure ledger again. So again, fund accounting, entry and processing, underneath budget ledgers, expenditure ledger. When this opens up here, we're just going to look underneath the finance department just as an example. And we hit search. It will bring up all of our respective budget units and accounts and budget information. And so up here at the top, whenever you have a specific line item selected, there's multiple options. So again, we just talked about the display through where we could select the respective periods, but there are a number of other options as well. Two others to really take note of are this requisitions and budget control options. So if you click budget control, as an example here, it opens up another prompt. And the first several columns here are really a lot of the same information that we just saw on the previous menu. If we scroll a little bit further to the right, though, we'll see this requisition balance column. And right now for the finance department, they're all at 0. And what that means is that we don't have any requisitions open right now that aren't converted to purchase orders. However, if we were to go and enter a requisition for $500 for something, let's just say software material here, it would show $500 right here. Now, where this becomes important, or even more so important, is when you run into that issue when you're looking to exceed the budget. So in this case, we have a balance of $3,700. If we entered a requisition for $4,000, it's going to show the $4,000 here under the requisition balance, or it might just give you that error code because we don't allow budgets to be exceeded. So this does come into play though when, again, if you're seeing that, maybe you already entered $2,000 of requisitions, but it hadn't been converted to a purchase order yet, and then you're trying to add another $3,000 for another requisition, and it won't let you. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, I've got $3,700 available, I should be able to enter a $3,000 requisition. Well, this is where you would come to double check and see, oh, it looks like I already have $2,000 entered here. No wonder I cannot do an additional 3,000, because that would, the sum of those two would put you beyond the $3,700. It would be 5,000 in that example. So this is where you could help identify, some of those potential issues and determine whether a budget transfer is needed before necessarily reaching out to the treasurer's office to see, hey, what might be the problem. If there were requisitions listed here, let's say again it was a $2,000 worth of requisitions on this particular line, the 516, and we hit back. Up here under the other option that I was mentioning, the requisitions option, if you went down and selected the 516 line and you clicked on the requisitions, it would pop open another menu that would show you those specific requisitions. Now there's nothing there right now, so if I click on requisitions, it's just going to say no matching records found right now. But if there were, again, it would pop into another menu, because that's how you would identify, okay, well, what requisitions are out there that I may need to look at or adjust, for the time being. So that's how budget control and requisitions can be utilized to determine, potential issues or how to get around. Maybe you want to decrease a requisition, for example, but you can't remember which one is hitting the 516 line in this case. That's where you could go look to identify that. Budget transfers. So we just talked about this a little bit. And so if you find yourself in a situation where a particular line item doesn't have enough funds, of course, we recommend currently to reach out to me to primarily handle those for non-grant funds. For grant funds, Sue Pardee typically handles the budget transfers for those. Just to give you a little peek under the hood for a batch budget transfer. And this is something that we're actually exploring the capability for individual users to be able to enter these themselves initially, and then they would flow through a flow process, almost like requisitions, but really they, if an end user, such as a, somebody who's entering requisitions has the capability to come in here, add a new batch budget transfer, and those would directly flow to me as opposed to going through the flow process like a requisition would. So we're exploring that with NeoNet right now, and that may ultimately, save some time in the long run. But this is essentially where I'm coming in and adding these budget transfers anytime that there is one needed, or you add a request to be able to do that. And so when you do email me that information currently, again, I need to know the dollar amount that you're looking to transfer, the budget unit and account, or budget unit and accounts if you have multiple, of where you're transferring the funds from, and then ultimately where you're transferring the funds to. And again, that it may be either one or multiple respective budget units. And we'll certainly get those turned around as quickly as possible, because we understand that you guys are asking for that for a reason, so that you can keep moving forward with what you need to do. Then the last thing I have here under budgets is the cash versus budget explanation. Simply, this I would say really is more applicable for your student activity funds, your 018 building principal funds, for example. As many of you know, there are the forms that are needed to be submitted, the budget and purpose statements, for example, that are required for all of those respective funds. And so when you're filling those out, you're filling out a revenue section and an expenditure section. Well, the expenditure section essentially is a budget plan or a spending plan, if you will. So if you're filling out a total expenditures of $5,000, let's say, ultimately that is what is getting entered into the eFinance system. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the amount of cash that you have available. So you might have $10,000 of cash available, but you're only saying, I really only want to spend 5,000 of that 10,000 in the plan that you've created. Now, throughout the year, for example, change your needs or your priorities or goals for that respective group may change. And if you say, hey, we're looking to exceed the $5,000, then you would need to revise your plan. And so oftentimes we hear the question, well, I'm looking to spend $6,000. I have $6,000 because they're referring to the cash. However, again, we go basically off of the spending plan, which is the budget, $5,000 in the example that I'm giving. And so if you're looking to deviate from that plan, then we must come back to and modify the budget accordingly. Another example would simply be if you did budget all of your funds. So if you had 10,000 and you submitted a budget of 10,000, you may go throughout the year and say you get a grant or a donation for another $2,000 and you want to spend that. Same thing, we would have to come back and modify that plan to change it from 10,000 of spending to 12,000. And so that's done typically with Nancy Claypax in our office, as well as myself. I help out typically with the budget adjustments on those. So I know that's a lot of information. We're going to move on here to some of the reports. And the first one we're going to talk about here is the Ohio Cash Position Report. So the Cash Position Report is just as it sounds. That's where you're looking up specific cash in that respective account, whatever that may be. So under Fund Accounting, Reports, or excuse me, State. This particular one is under the State for some reason. Cash Position Report. It's going to open up a new window here. And just as an example, we will look up an 018 fund. Let's just pick 9240 as the special cost center. We'll scroll down, number of different options. These, hopefully the A10100, the 102, 103, hopefully these are already populated in your respective eFinance window when you're looking to access this. If not, you'll want to take note of those just to simply have those added as the cash accounts here. The respective year and period, those are automatically populated, but you can always change that if need be. Then typically, again, it's going to give you that option of PDF or Excel. PDF is typically going to be the quickest. So if we hit create here and click yes to continue. And so this was for Roxborough Elementary's 018. And again, not surprising as of right now, there's not really any activity because we're so early in the fiscal year, but at least they have their respective beginning balance, excuse me. And obviously the current fund balance is matching right now. If there were any purchase orders that were on the books as of right now, those would show up in this current encumbrance column. And then subtracting that off would then show the unencumbered fund balance here. So again, Roxborough Elementary, just to kind of go back to my point here, we can take a look, full circle. So again, to get back to this though, Fund Accounting, State, Cash Position Report is where you access how to run the Cash Position Report. If we go back to entry and processing really quick, and we go to the expenditure ledger where we were previously to access their budget information, if we go look up budget unit 0189240, look at Roxborough Elementary's budget, we'll see we actually have a budget of $8,112.62. And you may say, well, why is that, Eric? That doesn't make any sense. It's more than the funds that they have. So if we click on a particular line, I just went and clicked on this 510 budget here. If we double click and open that, it'll open up the transactions menu, and I'm actually jumping a little ahead in the presentation here, but if we hit search, we'll notice that they had a prior year encumbrance. In other words, a PO that was open from last year. And it looked like it was, it's since been canceled, but that added $2,300 to their respective budget in this case. So anytime we have a carryover purchase order, because we're intending for that to be spent, right? That's why we would keep those respective POs open. So if we had, in this case, $2,300 that was open, we anticipated that there was some sort of bill that was to come in. Now, maybe that wasn't the case, and that was why they closed this particular PO. I'm not sure at the moment. However, this is why we often want folks to be reviewing the purchase orders that they have open, because if they're not necessarily needed at the end of the fiscal year, then we want to make sure that we're closing those in a timely manner. So just keep that in mind, because that does affect your budget balance. And I wanted to show you, though, that that's how you can have a difference between the the budget, as I was talking about earlier, versus the 6,300 that they actually have in cash. So we monitor both. Again, Nancy is really taking a look at both of those just to make sure we're not getting into a situation where we're potentially overspending the cash available. And Nancy does a great job of really reviewing all of that and working with you guys on your respective extracurricular activities and 018 funds there too. Encumbrance status report. So the encumbrance status report to me is really just a fancy way of saying outstanding purchase orders. So to access that, we would go to Fund Accounting, Reports, and let's see here, we'll double check this. Underneath financial statements, I believe it was this one. So again, as this report information says here, this report will print a summary of encumbrance transactions, encumbrances with a final payment, or excuse me, a status of final payment or close will not appear on this report, which makes sense because we're looking for anything that's outstanding. You can sort by these three different options, encumbrance number, organization, or cost center. Typically, I'm leaving that at encumbrance number. The PO number is typically most helpful. If you happen to know a purchase order number and that's what you want to look to see what is still open on a particular purchase order, you could enter that there, as well as the item number. Or if you're saying, I want to look up specifically from this respective fiscal year, and let's say a specific budget unit that you might have. If you're saying, we'll look up, just for example, the 27 is the maintenance department. And in particular, we'll just leave this blank for the account. There's a number of different accounts that they have. And again, you could add specific vendors if you'd like, look for a date encumbrance, but a lot of that information you may just simply leave blank, if you will. Oftentimes I will check this zero balance box as well as an option. And the reason I would typically do that is, for example, if you have purchase orders that have been spent upon and there's a zero balance left and they happen to still be open, sometimes that does happen inadvertently. You can simply reach out to the treasurer's office and say, hey, it looks like this purchase order has no funds remaining on it, but it still seems to be open. Can we please close that? And we'll do that for you. Then hit the blue search checkbox there. We'll just run this to screen. This will take a moment, but it's coming up here now. And you can see, from left to right here, it's showing the, respective purchase orders, the budget unit and account. This column has the vendor number, the date, name and description. You can ignore the sales tax and use tax. Then you have the original purchase order, the amount of payments that have been made on it, any changes to the purchase order, in other words, if there were any change orders, for example, and then the remaining balance that's showed there. So again, this is how you would access an outstanding purchase order report or an encumbrance status report as EFP defines it. And again, just as a reminder, one last time here, how to do that. Under Fund Accounting, Reports, and underneath the Financial Statement section, you'll have Encumbrance Status Reports. Purchase order reports, or just at least area where you can find, some information about purchase orders. Bear with me here. Actually, I think it's under purchasing. Under the purchasing section, purchase order processing, and you click under purchase orders. Again, like most menus, it's just going to give you a lot of different search criteria fields that you can specify to your liking. If you know a specific purchase order and you're trying to look at the different line items that were on it initially when it was created, you could punch that in there. Or if you know the requisition, you're wanting to look that up to see if it's a purchase order, I believe you can do that. You can look it up by buyer or a specific approval group. So there's a lot of different options here that would help populate the information as it relates to the purchase order. Now, one thing I will tell you is I don't believe that it shows you current payment information on that respective purchase order. So it may not be as helpful from that standpoint, and that's where I would recommend to go back to the report, the encumbrance status report that we were just looking at. But if you're just simply looking to know, well, hey, what was the PO number that it was converted to? Maybe if you're needing to correspond with a vendor, as it relates to that, then you could look up some of the original purchase order information within this purchase order listing section. And again, one more time to get to that is under the purchasing module, entry and processing, underneath purchase order processing, purchase orders. Then vendor payment history is another report that may be needed from time to time. Say, if you're looking up what has already been paid to a specific vendor, if you maybe didn't denote that already on a purchase order, or you forgot, or if somebody's asking you a specific question of what do you have on record, there's a way that you can do that via the vendor payment history report, and that is located underneath Fund Accounting, Reports, Accounts Payable Reports, vendor payment history option. And so as that window pops up, you know, I typically just simply do the by date option. That seems to be the most helpful. Click the blue check to, or tab button would typically work as well, to enter the report criteria down here. Let's say I was just simply looking for some data for fiscal year 23. I'll leave the period blank, say I want to know all of the payments that have been made this fiscal year. And again, you can specify any number of report criteria down here. If you don't happen to recall the vendor's number, you could click on that magnifying glass link there to come in here and search a specific vendor, for example. You can search by name, address, so on and so forth. And in this case, I'm just going to use an example. I do know one that I want to use here, 100444. So if you had something that populated up here, you could just simply double click that and it will bring you back to the original menu with that vendor number selected. And hit the check if you're ready to go. You want to hit yes to display the P-card vendor on the report. And again, you can run this to screen or Excel. Screen is simply fine for this purpose right now. And there you have your vendor payment history report. So this particular vendor, of course, has quite a few payments so far in this fiscal year. If you're, you know, some will have more than others, of course, depending on the activity with that. But again, that's going to show you the respective, the vendor name, the invoice, the purchase order number that was applicable for, the date. This is the check number above the date, the budget unit and account that was charged, a brief description, and of course the respective amount of the payment. So again, that was the vendor payment history report accessed by Fund Accounting Reports. Under the Accounts Payable Report section, you'll have the vendor payment history report. All right, hang in there, folks. We got just the transactions here, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break after this section. So I know we've covered quite a bit, and we'll also have plenty of time for Q&A too. So I appreciate you hanging in with us so far. Accessing within budget ledgers for transactions. So we did actually take a little peek at this earlier. So again, to access the budget ledger, the expenditure ledger underneath entry and processing within fund accounting, underneath budget ledgers, you'll see the expenditure ledger. And in this case, I'm, again, depending on whatever, search criteria you may be desiring to look at. In this case, I'm going to use a specific example. Again, the 1 generally represents the general fund. 22 in this case is going to be Ed Services. And 200920 is the function specifically that we want to look up here. And the account is going to be 525. And we'll go ahead and hit enter. And that's going to bring up a specific line item here where we have quite a bit of year-to-date expenses so far. And so if you want to see the transactional detail, just simply go ahead and double click on that line. And again, it brings you up into this transactions dialog box here. And you'll see, of course, the account and, the budget unit and account that we just entered. And down here, it does give you a little bit more search criteria. And so if you're saying, hey, I wanted to search for transactions within a specific period, or if you wanted to specify a date or a specific vendor, etc., you have the ability to do that. But a lot of times we just want to simply search for all of the transactions that may have happened throughout the course of the fiscal year. And so if that's the case, just simply hit the search button, and it will populate the transactions that have happened throughout the fiscal year so far. And again, as I mentioned before, you can click on any one of these headers to sort how you might prefer. Most often I'm using to sort by date. And just to explain a little bit what each of these columns mean over here to the right, of course, some are self-explanatory, where you've got the reference here. So if you see a number, most often that's either going to be a purchase order number, or even a check number here. A lot of times in the 70,000 range, with 7 and 4 digits thereafter, that's going to be our check sequence. And then the 23s, and of course a 22 would be any carryover purchase order. In the budget column, so originally this first one you're going to see on pretty much all respective budget units and account are going to have this posted from budget system. This is essentially a transaction that shows when I formally post the budget for all budgets. So that's what it's saying, is originally there was a budget for this particular budget unit and account in the amount of $110,150. Whenever you had any kind of prior year encumbrance, such as this one here, it also adds to that budget. In this case, $870.12, because again, we're expecting to spend that. And so initially you would see $870.12 in encumbrances as well, which is what we see reflected on this line in the encumbrance column. So the budget is going to reflect any changes to the budget. And I don't know that, well, we do actually. So we see that we've had a budget transfer here in this case. So that's why that is reflected here. And again, that's typically requested from the department. Whenever you have an expense, that's typically going to be reflected by a positive figure. And also simultaneously, you're going to see a corresponding negative amount in the encumbrance column. And again, this just simply means that as there's a payment for $15,525, there has now been removed from the PO balance $15,525 as well. So this is how you access just a high-level transactional information from the budget ledgers. Now, one thing I will tell you as well is that you can typically double-click on any one of those line items, and it will give you a little bit more information as well. So say, we found out this is on, even though this is shown on the last screen as well, here's the respective purchase order here, vendor details, so on and so forth. You can find when the check, was cut. This particular one was August 8th. But you can also, in this top right-hand corner, click on More Info. And this will give you a little bit more information on the respective purchase order that was associated with that particular payment. So there's quite a bit of information there. So again, that's just kind of a little bit of a rabbit hole, if you will, but that's if you ever need some information on a particular payment or specific transactions that have occurred on a particular budget unit and account, that is how you would go ahead and do that. Also up here with the paperclip option up in the top left, you'll see that it does have some attachments there. You can click on that and notice that you'll have the purchase order listed here. And I'm guessing this is likely another invoice, but you can click on those and view those respective attachments as well if ever need be. So again, that is after you have searched for a specific budget unit and account, double clicking it, hitting the search button, and it will populate the individual transactions that have occurred throughout the fiscal year. Now, one downfall to that, this option, unfortunately, is in this menu, is that it does not allow you to print from here. And so keep in mind, again, that's what I was mentioning, it's high level, just allows you to get to some of the information quickly, but it doesn't allow you to print it out. Sometimes that's needed and sometimes it's not. However, if you did need to print it out, we will go into the next topic, which is the expenditure transaction analysis report. And that, underneath fund accounting reports, underneath audit trails, expenditure transaction analysis. Which to me is just kind of a fancy way of saying to be able to review, those transactions, the expenditure transactions via a report that you can actually reprint. In this case, if we just selected 2023, we're going to leave the period blank. But under that budget unit, we're going to do the same budget unit that we were just looking at. And what the asterisk simply means, for those who may not know, the asterisk is just a wildcard feature. And so basically it's going to pull up anything in the system that may, that starts off with these 7 digits, and whatever else comes after it, if it's got, a different OPU, for example, it's going to bring all of those into the report that we create. Now, since I'm defining an account of 525, for example, that's very specific, of course. That only brought up that one particular line. So again, like all of the other menus that we've taken a look at, you can define any report criteria that you desire. And we just hit the blue check to accept that. We're going to run that to screen. And you'll see here again, it's basically giving you the same information from the transactional menu that we were looking at before. It's just now you're able to print it out. You'll see that you've got the, the budget information, the expenditures, encumbrances, description, so on and so forth. So this is really going to give you the individual breakdown that you might need. So you see there's 95,000 and some change that has been spent for this respective account. So again, that is accessed via fund accounting, reports, audit trails, expenditure transaction analysis. Now, one thing I will also say is from time to time, for student activity accounts or building principal 018 funds, it may be relevant to look up the revenue side of things. For most general fund accounts, there really isn't a need to look up the revenue. We're managing that at the finance department level. And so, but for 018s, 200s, 300s, maybe 019 fund, and even some of the 007s, which are like scholarships at the high school, for example, you may want to also periodically look up what's called a revenue transaction analysis report. So it's really same concept, except this time we're looking at the revenue side of things. So we talked a little bit before about a cash position report, and on that report it reflects the amount of revenues that have come in for a particular fund. So if we open this up and we just select the current year, which may not be as helpful, I guess, because again, we saw that there was no activity, but let's say we selected multiple years, and we'll just leave the periods blank. And we're going to look at that 018 9240, the same fund that we were looking at earlier. And we'll leave the account blank for right now. We'll see all the different types of budget units and accounts that are reflected there. If we hit accept, hit yes, we'll just run this to screen. So we can see, if we make this a little bit bigger here. So again, you're going to see a lot of these posted from budget systems. So just like on the expenditure side, we have all sorts of budget units and accounts for expense accounts, but we also have several for the revenue side as well. So in this case, we're seeing that now remember, we're having 3 fiscal years of data here. So we have, fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21, and fiscal year 22. So that's why we're seeing, 3 posted from budget system descriptions here and their corresponding amounts. Now, as we scroll down a little bit, you can start to see in the receipts column, some actual activity, donations that we have come in for a variety of reasons. We had some commission, which I'm guessing might be from maybe a different fundraiser of sorts that they had done in this particular fund. Different items, but this is again where you would see the individual breakdown of receipts that have come in. So if you said you had a $200 donation from a particular organization, let's just say, and you're wondering if that had been posted onto the books yet, you could come and run a revenue transaction analysis report and search to see, okay, has this been posted recently? Is it reflecting in my current cash level or not? And so this is where you would see that reflected. And, the respective budget in comparison to, actual receipts, for example. So I know that may not necessarily be used as widely as what the expenditure transactions will be on the expense side, just because we're oftentimes really reviewing the expense side much more than we are the revenue side. So again, one more time, fund accounting, reports, audit trails, and that particular report is the revenue transaction analysis report. And so with that, I believe we have come to our breaking point. And so I will stop sharing and pass that over to Sandra.
Thank you, Eric. We are going to now take a 10-minute break. And I would advise you to keep your mics on mute so that any private conversations aren't heard, and we'll resume promptly after this break. All right. And we're back. At this point, we're going to resume our presentation, I think. Let me get to the right slide. And I'm not able to, oh, are you, my bad. Wait a minute. One moment, I'm having some technical issues. I know you can hear me. I'm trying to advance the slides. I don't, okay, here we go. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna get my whole life together. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Eric again, who will talk about creating a dashboard in eFinance.
All right, well, let's get this screen shared here. Becky, I see your hand raised. Do you need something? All right, so when you're logging into eFinance, they have what you call a dashboard, which is really just your main screen here. And you'll see, you know, I've got 3 different panels, what they call them. One for reports, one that I've called general functions, and one that I've called month end. And there's this option where you can add new panels. So right now, all of these different panels that have different links within them, these are all favorites, if you will. So just like, you know, in your web browser, if you've saved a website as a favorite or a bookmark, it takes you to that respective page without having to type it in. Well, that's the same type of concept within eFinancePlus with all of these favorites that you can save. And I believe in order to do that first, and I'll say this with an asterisk myself, because eFinance Power School, who is the parent company of this, periodically has updates to their system, and they recently had one, and this hasn't been working quite as what I had intended it to. And so just like a lot of the different features that we've reviewed already, there's a number of videos that we've created that you can come back and reference when you'd like. We will also likely be doing one for this as well, but it has changed a little bit from what we're typically accustomed to. I've had a lot of these on my particular favorites already in place for quite some time, so I haven't had to add new ones here recently. So we will get that video to make sure that we can help you out with that. But nonetheless, you would add a new panel and give it a name. So if you click that, it's going to open up a new dialog box here, and under the panel type, you could likely click on this create new favorites group. And in here, and this is again what is all a little bit new to myself as well, under the menu here, you know, it's not as helpful because if you don't know all of what's in EFP, you don't even know what to type in here. But we'll go over something that we had discussed already. If we hit the very first option here, when we type in expenditure, we see that we get this expenditure ledger option. And so this is under fund accounting, entry and processing, underneath budget ledgers. This would be a good one to add, for example, because we talked about this a number of times, and this is where you would add your or review your budget information, for example. Favorite group's title, this is where I think you would give it another name. Maybe it's frequent, maybe you just call it favorites, etc., and hit save here. Now this is where I've run into issues so far since the update, because as we can see here, it didn't add a panel and it didn't really do seemingly anything. So not necessarily sure what's going on with eFinance for this. However, if you were to go into just to let you know how you can do this on a number of different reports or functions, features here. If we go down to the budget ledgers and expenditure ledger, just to show you where you can do this in a number of different windows that pop up after you've selected, again, in this case it's expenditure budgets, but there's a number of different reports and features that you might be accessing. Along the top bar here of navigation, you'll see a star with a plus sign, and it says add to favorites. So if you were to click on that, it's going to pop up another window here. You would give it a name, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you just call it budgets, for example, and then group name. So I already have a number of them on my dashboard, as I showed you. So I had a panel called month end, general functions, so on and so forth. I just created that favorites one, or you can create a new one if you simply click that. And I hit OK. Now in my instance, down here in the bottom right, it says the favorite item already exists in this favorite group. So for you, if you have not added anything to any favorites, you likely would not get that. But the goal, of course, once you do that, is you would have a panel with that link, whatever you called it, like in my case, maybe I'd said budgets, expenditures, that would take you directly to that. So if I click on my link here, again, it's going to take me right to expenditure budget, so I don't have to continue to go through the fund accounting navigation and say, okay, well, where was that again? Oh yeah, here it was. So I can just go to that quick link and open that up quickly. So again, we will be sure to get out a video that's hopefully a little bit more helpful and likely working. Sometimes we have to kind of pivot as PowerSchool comes out with adjustments in their updates and go from there. So more to come on that, but there is a way. I would recommend, if you're comfortable, to just give it a try and see if you're able to add those to your respective dashboard via the panels. That can really save you a lot of time from having to figure out where something might be. And again, if that isn't successful, you always do have this search bar option up here in the top right hand corner that you can type in different things. Again, expenditure, we have expenditure ledger is here, the first one, just as an example. All right, so with that, I think we're passing it back to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and present again. So now we're on to creating a requisition. And I'm going to go over to my eFinancePlus screen, I think. Wait 1 second. Let me get the right screen up. All right, thank you for being patient with my technical flubs. But here is where we want to go to create a new requisition. And I'm going to move through it pretty quickly because we do have instructions for that in the presentation. So you want to start by going to purchasing. Under purchasing, you're going to hit entry and processing, and then you're going to move over to requisition processing and requisitions. To create a new requisition, and I do want to emphasize that all purchasing has to begin with a requisition, but that's only the start. You don't want to purchase anything yet. You don't want to, start any contracts or solicit any professional services or anything, because the requisition is only the beginning. Until you have a purchase order in place, you should not do any buying, spending, requesting services or anything like that. So this is just the beginning. So you want to start with clicking the plus sign to add a new requisition. And we see some fields auto-populate as the requisition number does, and the date that you're entering the requisition. You will start by selecting an approval group, and we have more information about that later in the presentation. So I would go and select, and I have more options than you would have, but I'm going to go and select Finance Department. And in eFinance, tab is your friend. You can tab over to get to the next field. You don't have to put anything in the required field. You can search for a vendor here. I'm going to go with signature, and you can double click. And once you tab again, that will auto-populate that vendor. I want to point out that you must always, always, always click the Add Attachment button, because you can't go back and edit this field later. You want to put your microphone on mute, Laverne. And then, yeah, you won't be able to populate that field later. And you need to have the attachment field checked, because it allows you to upload documents and anything that we need to see related to the purchase order later. But you can't do it in the future, so always check that at the beginning. Freight, you don't have to worry about. Comments section, you can put in something brief, because it only allows you a few characters. It doesn't, this field does not fully show on the purchase order. So just put a basic description here. In the buyer field, you're always going to use the requisitioner's username in eFinance. And that's your first name, dot, and last name. Don't put the person that you're ordering for. You can put their name in the attention field. But this field in buyer is always your username as the requisitioner. Then we can tab. You can put if it's to someone's attention. Ship to, we have a drop-down box where you can select your school or your office location. That's your general information or your header information for the that will be on the purchase order. Next, we hit tab. Where am I? And now it takes us down to where we can enter information about our the items that we want to order. Commodity, we don't usually fill in these fields there. We usually just start with description. And the continuous button is automatically checked, because that allows you to move from one item to the next if you want to add more items. And if you don't, you would just go ahead and save your requisition. But if I'm ordering pencils, I tab, and I'm going to order. You can put something here, like if it's a lot or a box or a pack, whatever dimension your item comes in. So I usually just do lot, because this is going to be a blanket purchase order. So I'm ordering, let me not say pencils, because this is a blanket, and I'll describe that later. So Here I put the quantity. Since it's a blanket, I'm not ordering a specific number of items. And the amount that I want for this entire purchase order for supplies, I'm going to say $500. Then I can just tab through. Signature doesn't have shipping, so these fields automatically populate. Now I'm down at the budget unit, and that's where you want to enter your budget information. And oh, got too many numbers there. Do I not know my information? Okay. See, it won't let you move forward if you're entering the wrong information. Here's where you put your account code. This is my account code for office supplies. And then I would continue to tab. I do want to say here for accounts payable, this first line, you can see I'm in this requisition and I'm on line item 1. If you need to send some special information to the finance department about this purchase order once it is posted, this is where you put it, that very first line item description. If you want to, if you're paying fees for something and you have attached an order form or something like that, you would put here instructions for finance. Do not mail PO or send check with PO, or you can say email PO to, and whatever the email address is. So any special instructions that you have related to the purchase order, you would write on the very first line item. And you could still use this line item to say what you're ordering right there in that box. So if you're done with the purchase order, again, you can tab through all your fields. Maybe you don't have anything else that you want to add to this and you click save. If you're not done, but say you get interrupted and you don't want to lose your information from the requisition, you can hit this button, which is save in progress. That will save it, and it won't be complete, but you're able to go back in and finish out your order. But here I would hit save, which I'm not going to do. Or if you don't hit save, you just continue to tab through. It will allow you to go on to the next item and enter that information there. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. 1 second. All right, so as I said, I know I moved that pretty quickly, but if you go, once we share the presentation with you, you will be able to then click on these topics and get a full description of how to do these things. Also, copying a requisition, there's instructions there, adding an attachment, new vendor request, which Rebecca is going to talk about, but I just want to skip that 1 second and talk about blankets and multi-vendors. A blanket purchase order is what you would use when you're going to be making orders or payments that will be made over a period of time and not just one and done. So for office supplies, for my signature order, purchase order, I called it a blanket. You have to put a time period that has to be within the current fiscal year that we're in. I know that I'm going to be ordering throughout the year. It's not just one item I'm ordering and then the purchase order can be closed. I will keep it open for the remainder of the fiscal year and I will order throughout the year on that. So that's a blanket purchase order. A multi-vendor purchase order is, first of all, always a blanket. It's always considered a blanket because it's going to be more than one payment made on that purchase order because you're using more than one vendor. And that would be in the case of maybe you have several vendors that you use for office supplies and you just want to put it on one purchase order. You could do that and have multi vendors selected for that, and accounts payable can pay, say Signature or Lakeshore Learning or wherever you order supplies from. You can have it all on one purchase order. And I think now I will hand it over to Rebecca just to talk about new vendor requests, which we also do have documentation attached. So Rebecca, if you can go ahead and talk about the new vendor requests. Rebecca, we can't hear you. All right, I don't think we can hear Rebecca. So I'm so sorry, we can't hear you, Rebecca. I'm going to go ahead and show you what we have here. I'm so sorry because I know Rebecca had a lot to share. But under new vendor requests, if you notice that a vendor is not in the system and you'd like to use them, she has so kindly prepared this information about searching for and requesting a new vendor. We do have to make sure you get a W-9 from them. And I know I'm not doing this justice for Rebecca, but you have to get a W-9 and send it to accounts receivable at chuh.org or to R_Townsend. And she's provided that information. So requesting a new vendor and getting the W-9, all that information will be in the presentation and you'll be able to look that up. And moving on, approval groups and workflows. Most of you know how to look for your respective, let me go back here, acquisitions. And I'm going to go to new approval groups. For each school, you would have your main building, capital equipment approval group. That's if you're ordering equipment or anything that has a lifespan of over 5 years, or if it's over $5,000 for the item, you would choose the capital equipment group. That means that George Petcack will be able to view it and approve it. And then your IT or technology approval group is what you would select if you're ordering technology equipment or what else? Software licenses or electronic or online curriculum, anything like that. You want to select this technology approval group, and either Christina Bauer or Tony Slepko will be approving those items. So make sure you select that. Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Can we go back?
We can.
Okay. Golly, I am so sorry. And I am going to leave my picture up because it has blonde hair and I'm younger and thinner. So I'm shutting my camera off. On the well, a couple of things I just want to mention, and no wonder Eric couldn't hear me before when Eric was talking about favorites. My advice to you is probably it would be in your best interest to save favorites because there's nothing more frustrating for any of us who have e-finance on during the day is that perhaps you're suddenly in the middle of entering a requisition and it logs you off, and like for inactivity, and it tends to want to do that during the day. We seem to have noticed that if you do have favorites saved to your home page, that it will leave you logged in. For the most part, for me, I log in the morning and it stays on all day. It's rarely that mine will log me off because I have a bunch of favorites saved, just like Eric does, to the home page. So it probably would behoove you to save your favorites there. Also, I did want to also draw your attention to, as Sandra and Eric were moving through things, to bring it to your attention to resist the urge to use your browser back button, how important it is for you to use those arrows at the top of your eFinance page to go back and forth. Also, I wanted to bring your attention to the use of the asterisk, how important that is. If you know your whole thing that you're searching on, like a code, Eric was searching on, our budget units are 16 digits, followed by the 3-digit account code. And if you don't know the whole string of your 16 budget unit number, like Eric was using perhaps just the first 7 with an asterisk, that would be fine. If you know all 16, you don't need the asterisk. But sometimes if you're searching for something and you forget to use the asterisk, then it'll tell you nothing was found. Also, in vendors, Sandra, can you bring up the vendor page?
Yes, I will.
In
Just to point out,
finance?
I will, just to point out the time. So we want to move through pretty
Sure.
quickly. Thank you.
Sometimes less is more. And on the vendor page, you would go to purchasing reference tables under purchasing, and then the vendor list. So it's a good thing to save that to your as a favorites on your front page. You will be searching on the search name line. Sometimes we have to use abbreviations because we only have a limited amount of space, and sometimes less is more. For example, Sandra had searched signature before when making that requisition, and she just used SIG with an asterisk. But if there were multiple things to search for and you weren't sure if any of the other words in their name were abbreviated, pick out something specific, like she has office there, and put an asterisk on each side of the word, and it will pull up every single thing that has the word office in it. And that probably would, make it easier for you to find things. Also, if you click on one of those, you'll notice in the bottom there, it'll give you the vendor code number at the top, and the information is in there. Notice at the top that the paper clip is orange. That means something's attached to that file. And in our instance, you can see that when we issued 1099s to them, because this particular company is a partnership, so they do get 1099s, a copy of their W-9 form that we need to create a new vendor, because that has their federal tax ID number and other information in it that we need in order to create the vendor. We cannot pay them without a W-9 because we need to know their federal tax ID number, and that gives us the information as to whether or not they get a 1099 at the end of the year. So that's crucial, and the auditors ask for it. We need that information.
Thank you, Rebecca. And
Thanks.
So EFP find or password reset, we do have something attached for that. And also you want to be sure to take a look at our purchasing tips and reminders, where we just have some important information that you'll need to know regarding your purchases and purchasing. So be sure to take a look at that. We're going to just move on to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Keisha Cox and Lindsay Smith in our accounts payable department to share some information with you here.
Okay, just to make it quick and be respectful of everyone's time, there's some important things that you should know. So first off, with an invoices, we can't pay from a quote, a statement, a pro forma invoice, or a packing slip. Just be sure that you do provide us with an invoice. We need authorization to pay. That's just for basic invoices. For check with POs, Sandra did touch on that, and all of this is in the attachments, so you can read it yourself. So I don't want to sit here and read everything, but the check with POs, be sure to have that on there, because if you don't have that there and you needed a check to go out, we don't know about it if it's not right there for anyone to see. For reimbursements, crucial. We need original receipts. We need original receipts, and if you use a credit card, we need those receipts to be itemized. So otherwise, if you don't, we can't reimburse you for that. Anything you want to talk to them about? I mean, everything is here for you to read through. We do have other things to get through. So that's for invoicing. The other thing that we have to touch on is closing purchase orders. If you know that you're done with ordering something and the purchase order is still open, I can send you a list of what you do have open and we can close that. Be sure to close that. We won't close anything without you telling us to do so, because we can run into problems with that.
Unless the funds have been depleted, in which case it does it automatically on its own.
Right.
Nothing we can do about that.
Right. At the end of year closing or close to it, I'll send you out a list for you to review so that you can go through there and say you need to contact the vendors and say, you need an invoice, or something that hasn't been paid needs to get in touch with them so that you can send it to us and we can get that paid. Just anything else, you can actually call us. We're easy to talk to. I'm at extension 2012.
And I'm at extension 2015.
And we'll move on to the next thing.
Thank you, ladies.
You're welcome.
And I think Eric is going to share a little bit about our student activity accounts. Eric?
Yes, so just some of the things that I had mentioned earlier, so Nancy does help out, of course, with our student activity accounts, so that would be your 200, your 300 funds. We also have the 018 funds as well. So again, we have a formal budget process that we talked about, that we're sending that information out to all of the budget leaders so that they can review that information and get the budget submitted timely. But as we discussed, there may be changes that may need to take place throughout the fiscal year. And so if that may need to happen, of course, you can reach out to either to myself or to Nancy Claypax, and we're more than willing to help out. Maybe there's a fundraiser form that you need to review or fill out or ask questions about, because if you're in a new position and some things are new to you, again, we're more than happy to help out with the questions that you may have as it relates to your student activity accounts, just because there's a lot of information related to that, to budgets and other topics they're all kind of falling under that student activity umbrella. Just know that we're here to help, and you can feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we'll do our best to help you out.
Thank you, Eric. Next, we have deposit information about deposits and our Amazon business account. I am going to say that we do have detailed information that will be available to you with making deposits from the buildings and also with setting up and using your Amazon business account. Next, we have our finance forms, and we will have in the presentation a link, but all our forms can be found on the finance website. And the link will take you right there to our finance and development department and all the forms that you may need. Oh, yeah, payroll information is there. So it's all linked to the presentation, which you all will receive. Now we want to move on to payroll because we're pressed for time here, but I'm going to throw it to Carmen to go through some payroll information.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All you're getting is this picture. I'm pretty sure I'm the favorite department, but you don't have to say it now. I will go quickly through this. Everything, like Sandra said, everything is a link to everything that we have listed on here. So if anybody has any questions or anything on here, it's pretty much basic information that they have on here. Everything is accessible on the website. So if you want to send this out to people, maybe we might want to think about doing that. That way they could just hit on it. It's very good information for them. The payroll schedule, again, for all the secretaries, those dates are pretty well hardcore when it comes to those, because in order for us to do our payroll, we need that information at the date that we have listed. And again, most of the secretaries we've been having, it's been very well received. I know we have some new people coming in, so if you have any questions, please reach out to anyone on our team and we'll get that set up for you. We're going to go on. Sandra's my guide on here. For the extra assignments, again, those are the dates that we have that on the payroll schedule. Thank you. For those extra assignments. And we will be Denise, Tony later on will be coming out with something else for everybody that's listed on here. She will reach out with more information on this, which is going to be very helpful for the secretaries doing this information. So once we get this going, you guys are going to, get this information is going to help out so much. Well, we like to think it will. We'll need your help in this situation. And for the Time Clock Plus, we'll share details later on. Right now, there'll be something a little bit later on that we'll share out with this. We got to get some other things worked out, but another email, and I'm thinking it's going to probably be some training, definitely, that will be going along with that. So you'll see an email coming soon about that. Direct deposits. It's another form that we have on there. This is our form, but if an employee has something from their bank, it has to have their name, all the information on it, and it has to be signed and dated. We do not just take them filling out this form. It has to be something connected to it if they do not have a voided check, what a lot of people don't have. So, and again, they can talk to us about this. We really do not do these as emails. We prefer people to come in to share this information with us. And if they do email it, we will contact them to make sure that they are the person that is making these changes. The federal and state withholdings, we do have the new withholdings that's been out about 2 years now. We do not, for the federal, we do not advise on these sheets. They have to fill it out themselves. And if they have any questions with that, they're going to have to talk to someone, a tax consultant. We do not give information for them. These are the new sheets. And if they heard, we don't do exemptions anymore. So if they're grandfathered in, once they change it, they have to go to the new form and there's no going back. So if anybody talks about that, they can contact us about it if they have any additional questions. We have the TSA procedures that are out there. We do not sign anymore for the TSAs. We have a third party that takes care of our information. So again, no one in the board signs any type of withdrawals, rollovers. It would have to go through the TSA. And if they have any questions, all the information is listed on there for them.
And the TSA is our tax sheltered annuities, which is our 403B and 457 plans.
And we have a list out there for, you have to be on a provider list. We do not accept anyone that is not on our list. They have to be one of the verified providers that we have. So if they have outside people that they want to go to, we only put the ones that we have listed on here. So if they have any other questions, they can contact us about that. And I just want to add something that's not on here. For the Employee Access Center, we don't have that on here, but that on Fridays of payday, you will be able to see your actual pay stub a little bit more in detail the Friday of payroll. A lot of times, a lot of the questions come before they actually see the whole picture. So it's a lot easier when they see it on Friday. They can see it a little bit more accessible and more information for them. And again, that's on the website under the Staff Employee Access Center. And if they have any questions, there's a link out there that will send it to us. And as always, our employees can contact us. We have a payroll website. And it's payroll@chuh.org, and it would get to everyone on the payroll team and not just one person. So again, if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to us there. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. At this point, we will have some more information for you on federal funds and federal programs and grants. Sue Pardee is out, so she will be sharing some information with you on that later. Records retention and disposal. We do have our retention schedule on the website. It's linked to this presentation, which you will receive a copy of. Make sure that you refer to the retention schedule before tossing any records or documents that you have, because we have to follow some procedures and guidelines before we get rid of information. And with that, we'll take a minute for any questions that you may have. You can throw those in the chat or email us if you'd like. And I'm going to throw it over to, I'm not going to throw it, I'm going to hand it over to Scott to finalize our presentation.
All right. Well, I know that was a lot of information, everyone. And, certainly we tried to get through as much of it as we could in the couple hours that we had allotted. But I think that, this is going to be a great resource for you actually to refer back to. As we said, all the links are there, the documents are there. There will be training videos that are embedded in there, or you can, straight look back at this presentation and watch it again and see the things that Eric went through and any of the details you have there. So, appreciate your attention, appreciate the time. I think, again, this is our effort to try to get out in front of issues, try to make things easier and more efficient. And I think that the team has done a really nice job putting all this together. And so, as always, we are available to answer questions. Eric, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add here to the end of the presentation.
I think, just a couple comments, reiterating what you said, we're here to help. We want everyone to be successful in their job, and we don't want you to have any kind of frustration with the financial software. And so if we can, answer a simple question that you might have, or even a difficult question that we might not know, we'll certainly look into it. And if we need to get on the phone with NeoNet, our ITC, to look into some things, we're more than welcome to do that. I also would say too that, Carmen mentioned the payroll email. Accounts payable has an email as well, accountspayable@chuh.org as well. So sometimes if you're looking to close POs, feel free to send it to that email, and whichever of the two of them that can get to it quicker, they can knock that out by checking that email as well. So again, we're here to help. We're glad that you were able to attend with us, and we'd love your feedback as well.
All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time and attention. Thanks again to the team and to Eric and Sandra for putting everything together.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to stop recording.